Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
What's up, Grump? Any news today?
It is a glorious day, I guess. I don't know.
It was. It was until that Nick game until you started singing. So let's try to recover.
Well, NBA is kind of the third most important sport.
Your singing is, another matter altogether.
Compared to if your options are you or me, may not be so bad. Anyway, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
In the NFL world, Daniel Jones, the Giants, they work out a deal at the deadline. They work out a deal, sign it off, and are able to use the franchise tender on Saquon Barkley. I guess so. It depends on who you are. If you're happy with this, if you're not happy with this, I think opinions on Daniel Jones range everywhere from let him walk to give him whatever he wants. So, Cranky Finn, this is your time to talk. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Initial thoughts.
Well, my initial thoughts were, I didn't lose any sleep over the last couple nights because I figured, first of all, the thought that he would not be the Giants quarterback next year was not a possibility, So it wasn't like I was spending hours each night going, oh my God, what's going to happen with this deal? And, which is quite a shock considering 12 months ago, we were like, they're going to, not do the fifth-year option. They're probably just playing out the string and we will probably be a bad team in the quarterback chase for the draft next year. So a lot has happened in 12 months. So it really became a question of, playing chicken and who's going to win that battle of chicken. I'm glad, for the sake of the franchise, getting a deal done, allows the lets all the other dominoes fall, working out, slapping a tag on Barkley, that not exclusive for him, and, sets in motion everything else that can be done. I guess I just wasn't as passionate as other people in fretting about what could potentially happen. And I have patience, knowing that something was going to happen. I wasn't at all in that, well, I need to know something has to get done just for my sanity. General managers don't care about the fans' sanity and whether they can sleep at night or whether they're anxious. They're going to make a deal. They are going to, and that's how negotiations are. Negotiations for anything that happen in public are aggravating. They're annoying. They're, every little leak that comes out, you take as gold and gospel. But, they all knew there was a deadline. Daniel Jones knew there was a deadline. The New York Giants knew it. They made a deal, and we move on. So I'm just more relieved that all of this talk is over. I'm pretty disappointed in Giants Twitter from a fan perspective, from a media perspective on how all this was handled. It's really showing a lot of divisions on what people think of Daniel Jones and to some extent what they think about this, front office. And I'm just pretty disappointed that people have so many varied opinions and some of them just don't seem to make any sense. But as far as I'm concerned, this front office has a plan. And maybe the plan has been adjusted a little bit because Daniel Jones wasn't playing out the string this year. They realized that they could use him. So, they've had to modify it. But this move to me tells me that they had a backup plan and how they're going to handle if they wanted to re-sign him. And now we'll just let the dominoes fall for the rest of the offseason. And the last thing I would say on this initial thing is keep in mind that 2023 isn't the year. It's not do or die this year. The window doesn't close this year. So moves that are made in this offseason, starting with Daniel Jones, are setting this team up for sustained success, not what are we going to do in 2023? So keep that in mind as, all of these moves are making, starting with this one and Barkley and so on and so forth.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And I feel pretty good. I agree that I wasn't losing any sleep over this at all. I didn't really contribute to the daily or downright hourly contribution to Twitter of, just my thoughts on Daniel Jones every couple of hours. Did not feel the need to do that. I'd kind of chime in there, retweet a thing every once in a while if someone said something poignant or liked something. But in general, I just wasn't thinking that much about this. I got the sense that throughout the year that this was kind of the route that this was going to go. As that sense grew more and more backed up by news reports, whatever, what felt like controlled leaks. We've been talking about this for months. There was just kind of never a doubt in my mind. I mean, especially when you look around the league and there's plenty of teams that are quarterback needy that would love to have somebody as talented as him. And while Giants Twitter may be divided as they've seen him from his Duke highlights up until his 1 year, let's call it how it is, that he looked good. There's much more varied opinions. For everybody else around the league, there's only recent opinions. And there are definitely coaches around the league that are like, see, this is what we need to do with this guy. If I could just get my hands on him, I could blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, I know that this front office, if they were so out, like they had to know that. So if they were so out on him to let him hit the market, then I guess like they were really truly out on him, that there was not something there. So, I didn't get that sense at all. So I always kind of knew this was coming. Even at work today, like I forgot the day of the deadline. Like none of this was really at the forefront of my mind. So I'm comfortable with everything here. And as it pertains to Saquon Barkley, the leverage there in negotiating long term, if they want to continue doing that, if that never comes to fruition and Barkley plays the whole year on the franchise tag, then so be it. I think the Giants are comfortable with that should it come to that.
Yeah, I mean the savings, because you made the deal with Daniel Jones, you have money to play under that tag number with him, and it's not like his number is nowhere near the number would have been with Jones. I think a lot of fans who probably aren't really sure how the cap works, how contracts are negotiated, how they are structured, we're just under this assumption that, oh my God, that's a huge number for Daniel Jones. That's going to eat up all of our cap space. We will not be able to make any other moves. And that's not really the way it works. And, maybe if, NFL Twitter and the talking heads on TV weren't hysterical all the time with trying to get hot takes and, headlines about, crazy statements about what Daniel Jones is demanding and, this, that, and the other, maybe people would understand that, the Giants still have money and moves to make by making this signing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's not just the local media. I mean, I think there was a lot of national media that was just salacious headline, after salacious headline and all these negotiations to the point where we have idiots putting signs outside of agency. Did you see that shit?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'm embarrassed as a Giants fan for that kind of behavior. I think that's real. It just is dumb. It's not funny. If that was the aim, was to make me laugh, it failed. I think it's dumb, and I think it makes us all look stupid. It makes us look like, I don't know, assholes.
I mean, first of all, if you're Daniel Jones or you are any professional athlete.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even get into that part
your
of
job, you want to get as much as you can. I mean, the NFL is a dangerous sport. There is a limited shelf life that these players have. For the fan to say, or the media to say, oh, this is where we know how much Daniel Jones really wants to win. If he really wants to win, he will leave X on the table. Maybe that's what happens at the end of a negotiation. But to come in and say, I'm not going to ask for everything I can get because of some notion of, well, I want to win more. It's not his job to put together a winning team. It's the front office's job.
And let me sit there because that actually ties into a legitimate cap conversation. As we're talking about, the dummies of the world and how they handle business and whatever. There is a legitimate thing right there where people are like, well, if he's really going to demand this, he's just going to get more years of, where he can just complain that he didn't have the stuff that he needed, but it's going to be because of his own cap number, blah, 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 blah. And first of all, I mean, theoretically, that's kind of true, right? If you're ballooning up too much of the cap then you're not going to be able to pay free agents, etc. But like, and we've seen instances in the past, quarterbacks take pay cuts to allow other guys to sign, etc. Forget all that shit for a fucking minute here. This is a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can watch what Joe Shane did with like a sliver of cap space last year, what he was able to do with just that amount of cap space to get this team into the playoffs. I mean, what we're talking about is going to be exponentially more year after year after year, even besides this deal. So what evidence do you have that Daniel Jones is going to be playing in a shittier situation because of his cap space? If anything, the situation is only going to get better than the one he was in this year. They already have more cap space than they did when Joe Shane got here. So that sentiment doesn't make any fucking sense. It really doesn't make sense.
And also, who are these quarterbacks that leave it on the table? A Peyton Manning at age 38, a Tom Brady at age 42, guys that have already banked.
Or guys like Patrick Mahomes that know that they are only a player away from, something like that. Yeah.
Guys who already have hundreds of millions of dollars banked and who have already have won championships. I mean, you see, guys that are 27 years old who are about to get their first real paycheck. And again, don't give me he's a millionaire already, but I'm talking about enough money to set up the rest of your family for the rest of their lives and rest of their lives and the rest of their lives. They have every right to ask for that because something, every one of you would do the exact same thing in their situation. These players are not fans. They are professional athletes trying to make money. So join us in the real world a little bit.
Yeah. And so that's mainly why I didn't contribute to a lot of Daniel Jones Twitter. But I'm happy for this move. And let's talk about the move itself here. So it's a 4-year deal worth $160 million. So spooky $40 million average. There's an additional $35 million in escalators that he can earn. We also know that $82 million is guaranteed over the first 2 years. I don't know if this is actually fact or it's just rumored. I mean, I guess all of these details are technically rumored at this time, but I'm seeing unofficial people say it will only count for $19 million against the cap this year. That's huge. I mean, and that allows the franchise tag on Barkley and a whole bunch of other moves. So before we get into the details, I just want to announce where we are rumored to be at cap space. So we were currently in $47 million in cap space. We subtract $10 million for the franchise tag on Barkley to bring us to 37, $19 million allegedly for Daniel Jones. That puts us at $18 million cap space. Do not fret because we have already announced that we are cutting Kenny Golladay come the beginning of the league year, March 15th. That has not been calculated in yet. That's an additional $7 million back into cap space. So in this time, free agency pre-draft, where we're going to have to set aside money to sign the guys that we draft, and we don't know how much because we don't know how many picks we'll actually use, we have $25 million in cap space.
And that doesn't include if we potentially restructure guys like Leonard Williams also.
Of course. There's still moves on the table for guys like Leonard Williams, Adoree Jackson. Help me out. Is there somebody else?
I think those are the big ones for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. So now that we know that Daniel Jones is our guy, are you comfortable, at this stage in the rebuild and where the Giants are right now and what you've seen from Daniel Jones that he's your guy? Let's start from there. Are we both on the same page that we agree that the Giants' assessment that they want to invest in him to move forward based on what you've seen and what you project from him going forward?
Based on what I've seen and what I project from him in terms of my guy and if I think he's their guy.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, would he be your guy?
Sure. I mean, well, okay. Well, let's look at this. Let's look at this deal and let's look at the facts here. So the deal is with $82 million guaranteed over the first 2 years tells me that there's probably a year 3 out to this deal. So consider that here in the way that they view him. Now, this is kind of conjecture. We do not actually know the details right now, so I might be doing a whole fucking opinion on something that doesn't actually come to light. But That makes sense to me because you get him under the cap for this year. You give him the upfront money in that second year, but you'll probably know. Like, so if he, let's just say he's not the guy this year. Like, just say this is bad news shit this year. We made a mistake. We fucked up. That does not preclude them from drafting a quarterback next year and letting them sit behind him, behind his guaranteed money. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't have to be a we're out on the Caleb Williams hunt if he declares for the draft next year. I mean, if we're bad enough, they will take him because that means something drastically went wrong with Daniel Jones. And I would say that even includes a season-ending injury, right? I think sure. That's certainly something that's on the table, that they are willing to cut him after year 2 in a dead-out thing. And you can draft a Caleb Williams, and yeah, he probably doesn't deserve to or need to sit for a year behind someone who's bad enough to get you to draft him. But you still have that option. Mm-hmm. Or you can deal Daniel Jones, especially if the injury is the only thing. He might still have some trade value. So whatever. The point is, this doesn't preclude them from being only a year away from drafting a quarterback. That's still in play. For me, I think that's where I have more confidence in him than that. I think they do too.
And also, with that out, we don't know the details. That might be something that Daniel Jones can trigger. You know, he might all of a sudden have 2 great years and realize, I want to go back and test the market again. Right?
Yeah, I don't think that's how that works, dude.
It can't be a player out after 2 years?
I think you can work player outs into it, but generally that's just not something that is worked in. So usually when there's a dead out, I mean, I could be wrong here. I'm definitely not a cap expert or anything. My understanding of the dead outs, though, is simply that your dead hit is below your cap hit. Sorry. Yeah. So that there's that difference there. You do get savings. So when you cut them before the end of the contract, you will be saving money and not being penalized. Whereas in other situations, you have a dead hit that's higher than or the same amount as the cap hit. Your savings are nothing for cutting them, or you could be incurring more cost.
Right.
That's the way I say. I don't know if there is if those dead outs also have player exercises in them or not, or if that's something that has to be added. Mm-hmm. But I mean that is certainly a thought, right? Like I think in that case usually players hold out though, right?
Yeah, I mean we're so on the side of, well, what if he sucks and what if he's underachieving and it's a bust on our side? What if he outplays this contract? Because again, the cap
it's certainly possible, man. I mean,
yeah.
in a year or 2 years, Aaron Rodgers is gonna have a $60 million hit, and he might be with the Jets right across town. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's certainly something. I mean, that is something that happens in the NFL. Quarterbacks will demand more money,
especially in the next year or two, that we provide him with the weapons that he needs to succeed. We get him some wide receivers. We make this offensive line better. The run game is better. The defense is better, so they're not on the field as long. All these different things can happen. We are setting Daniel Jones up to be successful, even more so than squeezing the water out of the rock that was this past year.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a whole new setup, and it's like, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it would be far-fetched, but it's not. First of all, nothing is impossible, but like it's certainly reasonable to say that there is a pathway where the Giants do well this year and then in 2 years make a legitimate Super Bowl run, in which case he could then say, I have outplayed my contract.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I believe right now he is the 7th highest paid quarterback by average annual contract, but something, there's going to be a whole round of these rookies, still on rookie deals that are going to get paid. So he's going to be mid-tier paid relatively soon.
Yeah.
And if he starts playing better, even better and better, and gets into a more elite conversation of quarterbacks, yeah, he's going to be underpaid.
Yeah, I don't personally, I don't think that this is like a big deal. I think that this is a fitting contract. I know people think, oh, $40 million is too much. It's like, I don't know, man. Right now, I view him as the logical decision for the team. I think he's somebody that you're comfortable with, you're comfortable winning with. I think that there's a good relationship there. I think we agree that there is still ceiling. There is room for this man to grow. I think these are kind of facts. Whether there's enough room or, you've seen enough wins or whatever, that is obviously to be debated. But you certainly feel comfortable, with what's there. We agree that there's upside, etc. Right? And he's not on your roster right now. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to re-sign him, or is there a better option? And can you lowball him, or does he have leverage? And the fact is that there's other teams out there that need quarterbacks, quite a few, and they will definitely pay him the money. So
Yep.
I'm sure there's going to be comparisons to the Derek Carr deal, which I got to be honest, that happened this morning or
I think it was
last night?
yesterday.
Last
Yeah.
night, I did not get a whole lot of chance to divulge and break them down side by side. And whatever. Maybe those two contracts deserve to be compared against or not. But the fact is that with Derek Carr signing first, that's automatically going to be chips in Daniel Jones' pocket because it's
Sure.
leverage for him. It's one more quarterback off the market. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes logical sense. It's not outrageous, this contract. It's not outrageous, this decision.
It's just, if you're outraged by the number, there's one of two reasons. One, you just think quarterbacks and anybody's getting paid too much, but that's not relative to anybody else. Like when you hear the number $40 million to play a game, they're probably in that camp. Or you just never were in from Daniel Jones, either from the very beginning, from the draft pick, or you just didn't like him as a player for years 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Then so you are bringing baggage with you to that decision. So it's not a pure, when you stop and put it into context with other quarterbacks around the league, what the market is in 2023, and all that, it seems like it just kind of falls in line.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure people have cogent points to whatever argue their side, but like it seems to me that the people that if you have an issue with this, you're either you're just not thinking logically, or you are. Yeah, I mean you're either drastically undervaluing what Daniel Jones brings to the table, or you are drastically overvaluing what this draft class is going to bring you and what you think is going to happen that allows the pick at 25 to give you something or what. But or that you think any of these guys are worth drafting or trading up to get or whatever. I think you're overvaluing that, or you're undervaluing what Daniel Jones is. Or to me, the only legitimate concern is that he has a bad injury history, and I'm not really willing to commit to that. And I think that's probably the most fair criticism.
I wouldn't say he has a bad injury. He's had injuries in his past, but you know something? If we're so concerned about his injuries, how come almost everybody is like, bring back Saquon, who's had a worse injury history than Daniel Jones? I get it, different position, different value and stuff, but I think injuries are just something you just have to, you roll the dice with any quarterback. And that to me is, if it was something where he was constantly injured and he's only playing 8 games a year, 7 games a year across 5 years, that's one thing. But I wasn't really worrying about the injury when I was thinking about him going forward. A couple of things I did hear from people, which I thought was just beyond silly, was just like, well, we have Tyrod Taylor. Let's use him. And we're paying him. Let him earn his value. Guys, if you think that this team is moving forward and it's, playoff run and building towards something, and Tyrod Taylor is your answer, I don't know what sport you're watching.
Well, I have a comment on that, is that's a legitimate thing to say in the scenario in which Daniel Jones had a very bad year last year and they had no interest in re-signing him, and you need to fix something because this is not a good quarterback crop this year. Then yes, it's a viable option to play a whole year with Tyrod Taylor just to get to that year where you move on from him, and hopefully you're bad enough to trade or to trade up to get Caleb Williams or somebody in the draft.
Well,
That's the only situation. You never consider Tyrod Taylor against Daniel Jones. Which one do I actually want?
No. Well, and to be very honest, if Daniel Jones has an awful 2022, we are in the draft market this year for Anthony Richardson, for C.J. Stroud, for Bryce Young. Our record is atrocious if he is bad this year. So there would have been different possibilities with how you approach this draft. Never mind even next year's draft. Fortunately, that didn't happen.
Was there something else you wanted to say that was a silly thing you heard?
No. I mean, I just kind of that was one of the main ones. I think that people are just like, if you thought that this Giant team, if you didn't think last year was a fluke, and you think that this team, even though it might have overachieved, you think a foundation is really there, worrying about having your backup quarterback play next year or relying on a rookie, you are going to slow that progress down. And I don't think the Giant fan who's finally had the slightest taste of success last year after a decade of, unwatchable football would be willing to accept that in September. They may talk the talk now in March, but when September comes along, would not be accepting of it.
Yeah, for real. I want to transition. Of course, that happened. Sorry about that. I do want to transition to the draft talk because you did mention if Daniel Jones is so bad in 2022. Then we're in the market for the draft this year. And I think that the draft this year is an interesting conversation at quarterback because this is something that I do think that some Giants fans were interested in, was the quarterback market in the draft. And I have to be honest, I think this is a bad class. I don't think this is the class that you want to be drafting a starter in. And to me, for the first time, I think an Ohio State guy is the top of the class. I do like C.J. Stroud the best. I think he's probably going to go first overall. And do you think there's any way that the Bears would draft and trade bait Justin Fields? That's totally out of the question, right?
I think so, but I also think that Anthony Richardson is going to be the first overall pick.
I think you're outside of your mind.
I think that somebody is going to trade up and say, I just can't pass up this guy. I mean, we all saw the combine, and again, I'm speaking from someone that has watched more Anthony Richardson than anybody who's listening to this show right now, and from what I saw is different than what people's hopes and dreams and expectations what this guy could be. I think he's going to end up being number one. I just have this real suspicion. I think he became Superman last week, and I think that a lot of GMs have Google eyes, and they think they can make something out of him. My question to you is going to be, Grump, let's say this was next year, a hypothetical, and Daniel Jones shits the bed, and Anthony Richardson was available. Would you draft him next year and have him sit for a year or so and wait for that year when you can get out of the Daniel Jones contract?
You just couldn't let me, you couldn't wait for me to get to Anthony Richardson. You had to just drag it past C.J. Stroud. He's not. Let's take this one fucking step at a time. God damn it, he is not the best quarterback in this draft class. I will admit, I do think that there is a chance he goes first overall, and I'll tell you why. It's because the Bears have the pick. It's because the first overall pick is going to be listening for best offers, and they don't give a shit. There is a chance that a team that is not immediately quarterback ready or quarterback needy has enough to move up to take him when they know they will soon be quarterback needy. And I don't know what team that is, but I do foresee that as a possibility. I will say that if whatever team moves up and drafts him first overall, decides to play him as a starter year one, they will sorely regret it, and they will fuck up the person.
1,000% agree with you on that. The team that is drafting him this year, whether it's first overall, fourth overall, whenever, should mothball the guy for at least a year. He is nowhere near ready to play in the NFL. That's why I asked the question about that hypothetical. But,
so for that hypothetical, then yes, I believe I answered that question just by saying that, right?
Yeah.
But so, all right. So
my question was, would you do it in the Giant situation?
In the Giant situation, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The only offshoot is where am I, and Do I have a shot at Caleb Williams too because it's
Hmm.
next year? And I don't know. Hypotheticals. There's a million things we could go down.
Yeah.
Who knows? We could have a phenom we're not even thinking of right now coming
But
next
we're
year.
but we're thinking is he is a guy that we definitely would say I would do what I can to get him, and I would stash him for a year, and when his time is time, then we
So
would
so
go.
we'll talk about them side by side because
Hmm.
that's the right way to do it, right? So if you need a
Yes.
quarterback right now and you're the first overall pick, your choice should be CJ Stroud. I mean, you don't have a quarterback on the roster. Let's say it that way. CJ
Yes.
Stroud to me looks like a true pocket quarterback with some mobility, but what he has to me is an ability to manipulate the pocket. He has really good accuracy. Um, the question always comes back to the Ohio State thing, right? I mean, he was rarely under pressure or faced anyone that had a complicated matters in coverage. He generally had far superior athletes running wide open in secondaries. I mean, I would say the one thing he does have to improve is his like beat in the pocket because he was so calm back there that he had flat feet.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's a guy who does not need a ton of work for me. I mean, it's going to be probably a lot of film study, upgrades, more complicated defenses. If that Ohio State question is not a real thing, then whatever. On the flip side, we're talking about Anthony Richardson. And I'm going to just say what I see on film, and you can just kind of fill in the gaps when I'm done, because
Sure.
I can
Sure.
Cliff's Notes this, right?
Hmm.
So basically where he stands out, he is an athletic stud with a cannon for an arm, but also really beautiful touch passes. Um, as far as what he needs to improve, I would say it starts and ends with fucking everything. I mean, the mechanics
Hmm.
are all over the place. The decision making has failed because of it. It just needs to be under control more. I think he needs a lot more experience in doing film work, reading things pre-snap, reading things post-snap. There's obviously bits there. He's not. I'm not saying he's a stupid guy. What I'm saying, and what concerns me the most about Anthony Richardson, because we agree he's a project franchise guy. He's a
Hmm.
franchise guy that you cannot start right now.
He was a project in Florida. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
he came from a very un sophisticated offense at Gainesville High. So he was starting
Mm-hmm.
behind the eight ball already at Florida and had to go through two different coaching changes in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, he's clearly a guy you take a chance on. But comparisons to it being kind of like drafting Mahomes, to me, that's off. And the concern for me is that Mahomes had starting experience in college. He was
Hmm.
comfortable running his college offense. Richardson had nothing of the sort.
Hmm.
And what he is lacking is just general live bullets. There's
Hmm.
nothing that you can do sitting behind a starter or working with him on the side or him coming in early. There's nothing you can do to substitute that. So I don't think that you're going to get the situation where midway through year one, you're subbing in Alex Smith with Anthony Richardson and everyone's got goo goo eyes. That's not going to happen. He's
No.
probably still, even after a year, maybe even a year and a half, have a lot of troubles going through things. That's not to say the offset obviously are the highlight plays. He's Michael Vick, Cam Newton, whatever you
And,
want to say, right? So go ahead.
and,
Let's
and, and not even that, not even the highlight plays. He had just his natural ability to get out of trouble and gain a yard when it should be a sack for most other quarterbacks, too. So, the Florida offensive line was pretty decent last year, but he also, minimized the number of sacks by just his pure athletic ability, just getting back to the line of scrimmage, getting 1 or 2 yards when it should have been a 5 or 6 yard loss. Your points are right on. If Dan Mullen actually sticked around, and if he would have actually started him over Emory Jones, he would have stuck around probably for a second year. That was an offense I think he was a lot more comfortable running than the offense that Florida ran this past year. I mean, the offense that the the Gators tried to run last year was very similar to what the 49ers tried to do. The Gators didn't have the personnel, obviously, that San Francisco does. So, would Anthony Richardson ultimately be successful in a 49er offense as opposed to one that's more custom made to doing the things that he does best? Well, we don't know. Probably, maybe not. Maybe so. Um, he only started 13 games, and You look at the history of, the average number of starts that a number one or a top five or top 10 drafted quarterback, a lot more than that. Um, he also, his big thing was just the inconsistency. You know, he played against Utah in week one, a top 10 team, and looked fantastic. Making smart decisions, running the ball, showed some accuracy. But then against Kentucky, an team, was god awful. And he also wore his emotions on his sleeve. Like when he started, 3 or 4 incompletions in a row, you can see he was rattled. And that threw him off that entire game. He was atrocious in that game. Um, Against Tennessee, a top 10 team, played fantastic. Just got into a rhythm, threw all over the place, running when he needed to. But then, when he plays in the Vanderbilt game, significantly less talented in Florida, again, starts off a bad first quarter, it's in his head. So getting that out of his head, that comes with playing. And, again, 13 games. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. So somebody's going to take a chance on him. Somebody's going to, decide this guy, we see his skill set. They're going to build an offense around him. They're going to get weapons around him. It's going to take a lot of time. Even then, it still may or may not work. Um, None of those teams that feel they're just a quarterback away or looking for a quick fix, this is not their answer. Or someone that's even a playoff team. I don't think it's someone that's going to have to rebuild, starting with him as the foundation and building around him. Kind of like what Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson. I see that comparison.
That's interesting. Yeah. Um, so I honestly I like Anthony Richardson second in this class. Um, but it's such a unique situation that I'm gonna rank him third, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. Here's what's interesting: the next two guys, and the only other two guys that I personally view as day one quarterbacks. And when I say what I view, I don't mean where I think guys will go. I mean my value, where I grade them, just as a general from now until the end of time. When I say that, that's what I mean. They're both SEC guys, so I know you're not when you're watching games, you're rooting for your team. You're not scouting or anything like that. But you're watching.
To say who's a good quarterback, who's not a good quarterback, who's next level. Yeah, I am.
So I want to know your thoughts on Will Levis from Kentucky and Bryce Young from Alabama. I want to know just kind of what you think of each of them and which one you would rank ahead of the other.
Oh, I don't think it's even close. I would have Bryce Young significantly above Will Levis. Will Levis, the Florida game this year, I was kind of unimpressed with him. You know, you could see he has a cannon, but I didn't see the intangibles. I didn't see a guy out there. It's like, oh, this is a top 10 pick in the draft. I remember saying to the buddies at the game, thinking, Richardson and him, thinking, oh, these might be two top 10 quarterbacks. I'm like, God, these are top 10 quarterbacks, both of them. He had one long pass, which was basically a jump pass that the receiver, snatched the ball out of Jason Marshall's hands, for a touchdown. I don't know. He's a big kid. He's a very confident kid. He feels like he's a leader, but it doesn't look like he's a franchise quarterback to me. Bryce Young, on the other hand, looks like, you look at him physically and you're like, is this guy an NFL quarterback? But he seems to have that it. Like he makes the throws that have to be made. He moves the chains when he has to. Um, Again, like you said to start this is not the greatest draft for quarterbacks. This is not going to be an Elway Marino year, but I would have him over Levis for sure.
So I actually have them flipped, but I do agree with your assessment kind of both of them. I sort of agree. All right, so let's start with Will Levis. I have him above Bryce Young, and I think it's because he is unimpressive, right? So when people were clamoring about this guy, I put the tape on and I was like, I don't know. I don't see
He's
it.
all right. I mean,
yeah.
Kentucky, did they outkick their coverage because of that quarterback? No. I mean, someone like that, you want a quarterback who's like, when they had Tim Couch, for example, way back when Kentucky, or when Vanderbilt had Jay Cutler. It's like this guy made a kind of a crappy team a heck of a lot better just on that one guy. And I never got that sense with Will Levis at all.
So I'm not I'm not sure where I land on him, partly because I think this Kentucky team is bad.
Mhm.
And that certainly doesn't help him. But where he stands out, right? Let's just what makes him special that we're even talking about him day one is arm strength, right? Like he's a big kid, he can truly flip the field with his arm. You said it yourself. He just feels like a gamer. He's like a leader. I think he kind of almost reminds me of Baker Mayfield in that fashion. I don't know if that's maybe too much.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you
But
could tell Baker Mayfield was the undisputed leader of that team. He was
yeah.
their heart and soul. He was the guy, doing the horns down, all that type of stuff. I completely get where you're going with that.
Yeah, in that sense, you see it a lot when he's running because he runs with purpose. He's not afraid to truck a DB or something like that. He'll run like that, a little wild, whatever.
Like a Daniel Jones?
Well, no, not at all. He's not nearly as natural looking running the ball. He's not half as fast as Daniel Jones. But I mean, like he'll run somebody over. Same with Daniel Jones. But when he gets up, he's all pumped up and fired up and shit. You know what I mean? I honestly think it has a big effect on the team. I think it has a big effect when Daniel Jones runs guys over on the team as well. Certainly has a big effect on the crowd. And I do think that it amps people up, but that extra, that getting into it, I think that helps. I think, especially a college team, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's fucking issues with this kid, man. He gets way too locked into his first decision. And to me, some of that could be just Kentucky sucks, right? He's behind an offensive line that blows. He's under constant fucking pressure. And they don't really have a whole lot going on at wide receiver. The shit's not really all that complicated. I'm not sure how much of that is really his fault, but it certainly looks bad. More for me is that he is bad in the pocket. He does this shit where he fades away to make a throw under pressure instead of evading pressure. He just keeps dropping back and he does this fadeaway shot. That's never going to be accurate. It's never going to fucking work. It's likely to...
People are like, oh, that's throwing off his back foot. People say that type of throw, right? It's
kind of, yeah. But I mean, it's like self-implicated. A lot of times when you're throwing your back foot, there's pressure literally in your face. This is him just deciding to evade pressure by backing up, which you don't want to do. Like he'll take 7 steps backwards and then just do a hail. You know what I mean? Don't do that shit. It's bad. Right. He's got shit to fix. But I do think that there's stuff that can be fixed, and I do think that he was a product of a bad school. On the flip side, Bryce Young, you nailed it, doesn't look the part. He's 5'10". That does concern me. Do you know who else is 5'10" in the league at quarterback? I think the only other person is Kyler Murray. The difference in where I saw Kyler Murray as a number 1 pick is A, he was pretty damn accurate, and B, he had a special ability to escape the pocket where his size no longer mattered. In fact, you could actually argue his size was an advantage in getting out of situations. I don't see that shit with Bryce Young. I do think that he runs really well with the ball. He's certainly a smart kid. He's a good quarterback, but his accuracy isn't that good for me. I see it. It looks behind. He looks high. He looks low. I see all kinds of issues. To me, you add this stuff up, that's why I have Levis above him. Right now, I think Bryce Young is probably better. He certainly has better film, but I don't know, man. I think some team is going to try and draft him and put him in day 1, and I think it's going to be some growing pains for him. If whatever team takes Bryce Young gives him some time to work his way up to it, I think we'll see a much better career from him. I just don't think that's going to happen. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I just, other than Anthony Richardson, and he's a special situation, there's nobody in this draft at all where I'm like, I need to trade up to get this guy. Regardless of my situation, is like I'm salivating at the chance to have this guy become my quarterback for the next 10 years. And I think that goes for Levis, that goes for Young, goes for CJ Stroud, I think. And I think it's just the lottery pick potential or the lotto ticket potential of Anthony Richardson that people even consider that.
I don't usually do this kind of stuff, but if there was teams to pick one of these guys and set them, is Tennessee a team that would take Levis and sit him behind Tannehill, you think?
I can see that. I mean, Tannehill to me always seems like a quarterback that people have waiting for the next guy. And
Right? Yeah.
sometimes he just hangs around and just is your quarterback for a few years.
I don't really know the details of his current contract and how much time is left and whatever, but that feels like something I could see, right?
Totally, totally.
But I don't know. Is that just like Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man? Are you just replacing Ryan Tannehill with future Ryan Tannehill? Maybe that's why I can see it so well.
I feel there's more up. What, are you talking about with Levis, or are you talking
Yeah,
about
with
with
Levis. I mean,
Oh, Tannehill to me was always like, is he a backup or is he a starter? Well, now
that's
he's
what I
starting,
thought. Yeah.
and now he's just still starting. I don't think Levis is he a backup or a starter? I think he could be a starter in this league. I just don't know if he's upper echelon, more than mid pack at best as a starter. Where Tannehill to me always was like, all right, he's going to be a really good backup. He can play those couple of games, and well, now it's his opportunity. Like Geno Smith almost.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, really good, solid backup who, all of a sudden starting.
So I have one last little conversation I want to talk about with the quarterbacks here. I mentioned that these are the only guys I view as day one guys, which means everybody else is going to be day 2 or day 3, which means your Max Duggins from TCU, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, Aiden O'Connell from Purdue I kind of like. The other guys, Jake Haener, Tanner McKee. Actually, I don't mind Stetson Bennett if we're just looking strictly at his ability, whatever. In comparison to the other guys, he's actually polished and knows what he's doing. Like Tanner McKee from Stanford looks like garbage to me. Jake Haener was bad. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I didn't like him. Aiden O'Connell, I can see some stuff. My question here is, obviously the big ones, none of this matters. As I talk about me grading quarterbacks and stuff like that, especially these guys who are probably not going to be starters. But it does kind of play into this, and I asked you this question. I told you I was going to ask you this question, right? And that question is, how far would a quarterback that you kind of like have to fall before you consider drafting him to cut Tyrod Taylor? Now remember, Tyrod Taylor costs $7 million right now. There is, to be more precise, $6.9 million. Nice. And the dead hit is $5.525 million, which means cutting Taylor saves around $1.375 million. So that's significant if you feel that you've replaced him. Now, as I'm saying this, what we're talking about here is like, could you see Hendon Hooker as a backup to Daniel Jones? Could you see drafting any of these? I mean, shit, Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker are old enough to be backups for Daniel Jones, I would say. Right?
I believe Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker are older than Daniel Jones.
They're both 28, aren't they? Or something insanely old?
No, I think Stetson's 26, and I think Hooker might be 20. I think they both might be 26.
Something like that.
Hooker might be a little older. Like I was going to say to you about Hooker, is like, let's say he was 21. Is he a day one quarterback to you? Is the age alone, and also the injury, is that what puts you in a day 2 or day 3?
The age and injury combined, I think, is what puts it down. Because if it's just the ACL, you're like, oh, well, he's a young guy, whatever. And if it's just the age, you're like, oh, well, he's 28, but I need him fucking now. He's good now. What do I care if he's 28, right? But when you combine them, it's like, well, now we're not even getting him until he's like 29. And you still got some stuff to clean up. I mean, he does. So if you're asking me if there's issues with him, there absolutely is issues. For one, I don't think he throws with any fucking anticipation whatsoever. Some of his best throws, he is absolutely waiting for the receiver to be on the trajectory that they are going to be on. His deep passes suffered from a lack of anticipation and a failure to get actual depth. And like even things like slants, he can't throw before the cut. He can't anticipate. He's got to see the cut first. That won't fly.
And it was a kind of a gimmicky offense too.
And it's a bullshit offense. Tennessee's a bullshit offense. So no, I don't view him as a day 1 starter. No.
Okay.
That's why he's a day 3 for me, in addition to the age and the ACL.
Okay, gotcha. To me, there's a lot of factors. It's the Giants now. This isn't last year where I could just get anybody to be the backup quarterback and just be a babysitter placeholder. The Giants now, we think, are a playoff team, and every game counts. So, Tyrod Taylor is not the best quarterback in the world, but Tyrod Taylor is a veteran who knows the offense, and I feel more comfortable with a guy like him if he has to play 1 week, 2 weeks. If it's 7 or 8 weeks, well, we're probably screwed. And even drafting a guy and having a rookie play 7, 8 games, we're probably screwed also. So a lot of other factors too, like how many of those draft picks are we going to draft? I mean, we still have a lot of holes on this roster that we need to address. Backup quarterback may not be one of our highest priorities, but if we are, you know, if we're using all of these extra draft picks that we have, we're not trading up and we're not making any, deferring picks to the year after to save money and all these different things. Um, I would say it'd have to be pretty low. I think they're gonna.
Well, hang on. Before you give the actual answer, because you gave some insight that we didn't really talk about, was like, the state of the team and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
agree with you there. The Tyrod Taylor is not very good. Whatever. Just to throw this out there for people who don't know or whatever, there is savings from cutting Tyrod Taylor and drafting his replacement starting in round 2. It's not significant at round 2. It's only 200,000, and it increases to varying degrees of 400,000 between their 2 round 3 picks and their round 4 pick. But because of the top 51 rule against the cap, the savings kick in at round 5 with the 163rd pick. By cutting Taylor and drafting his replacement, you are saving $1.3 million. So it's not nothing. I mean, yeah, in the context of NFL contracts, that sounds like nothing, but that's significant wiggle room. So and it goes anywhere from 1.3 to 1.35 depending on which round, starting from round 5 and down.
Let's just say this. This year coming up, I'd be more likely to do it than I would the next year. If let's say next year we are 11-5 or 11-6 team, we lose the division to Philly by 1 game. We think the next year we're going to be a Super Bowl contender. The answer is no. I think this year is the last year we're in that transition between being a playoff team and being a contender for the Super Bowl. Maybe we try to get away with it this year, and you roll the dice a little bit. Hope Daniel Jones is healthy for 17 games, and that backup never touches the field. If we think like the next year we're better and we're a contender where every game truly matters, I don't know if I do it, but this year maybe you try to roll the dice a little bit with it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, as terms of like generally speaking, it's either going to be this year or the year after a legitimate Super Bowl run, and I think it is likely that after this upcoming season, I mean, I think it's likely. I'm projecting at this point in March that this upcoming season will feel by the end of it that the next season, 2024, is going to be our Super Bowl contending year. That's not a good year to waste a draft pick on something like that, unless, of course, it's the guy and whatever, right? But in that case, then you probably do it in 2025 because you feel like, all right, well, now we're going to be in this window for some time now, but we do need a backup, etc. Then it becomes more of a need by that point anyway.
And also at that point, again, we are still in roster, even though we are a playoff team now, we're all excited. We are still in roster building mode. We still have a lot of holes that need to be fixed, bigger concerns. We rattle off. We need a cornerback. We need a wide receiver. We need a linebacker. We need a safety. We need, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of needs on this team as opposed to wanting to be cheaper at backup quarterback.
Yeah, well, it's wanting to be cheaper, but also guys with upside and guys, like I said, a guy you like. So I listed the guys that kind of fell behind there that are day 3 guys, and I kind of prattled off the guys that I do like. Max Duggan, Hendon Hooker, I think can be a good backup. Max Duggan, I think, can be a good backup. I think Aiden O'Connell from Purdue could be a good backup, and I do think Stetson Bennett could be a good backup quarterback. I know that is like fire in your eyes, but I mean, logistically looking at his mechanics, what he can do on the field, he looks like a backup quarterback in the NFL.
He looks like an arena football quarterback to me.
Yeah, honestly, no. I do kind of agree that. I do agree with that.
I'm not saying that because he's a Georgia quarterback and he's a little twerp and I don't like him, but to me, he could have. I don't think there's ever been a quarterback in college football history that was set up for success more than Stetson Bennett. With that offensive line, those receivers, those monster tight ends, an all-time great defense in 2021.
I would agree with this. Yeah.
And all these different things. I could have gone back there and been an all-SEC quarterback. He's not big. His arm is He's smart. He's mature. Well, I'd say he's mature, except for the guy got arrested for disorderly conduct for drinking, and also pulled the "Do you know who I am?" at a restaurant and didn't think he should pay. But so maturity may not there, but like you talking about Anthony Richardson, he started 13 games. How many games did Stetson Bennett start? He started over 30.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, go ahead, keep going. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to
yeah.
interrupt.
No, I'm saying like he started over 30 games at Georgia, and not just playing games. Like he played in how many SEC championship games, how many college football playoff games, how many national championship games, how many major non-conference games. So the guy, he knows the spotlight, he knows the big
Right.
situation. So all that stuff I can see, but to me, he's still just a little twerp who I don't think is an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely on the lower end. He's the last guy I'd mention out of quarterbacks I could see as an NFL backup. I agree there. Like, I think he thinks highly of himself. I think
Oh
first of all,
God.
he is older. I think that plays into it. He knows the spotlight. I think he would rather be, and again, I know I'm the only one that watches this, talks about this, whatever. I view him as an XFL starter, USFL starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would take to the backup role very well. He probably would be that for like a year or something, but I could see him leaving it. I don't know anything about him
He
personally because I don't really care. I didn't.
he
I'm going to
probably
be
made
honest. I didn't do character work on the quarterbacks. I didn't think we were doing anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be very honest, he probably made more money in NIL this year than he will with a roster spot in the NFL as a backup quarterback
Interesting,
drafted
yeah.
in the sixth round. So you're right. If he's taking a pay cut to be in the NFL, you're right. And also being Mr. Swinging Dick in Athens for 2 years, with a name like Stetson Bennett the fourth, Jesus fucking Christ, the guy just he just oozes entitlement and elitism. So
I could see like by year two, The Rock doing weird things to kind of like get players like that by offering bigger contract. Can you not?
sure,
I mean, I'm being serious. Like
I
you see a guy where he's like he has no NFL future for real. He's seen the shit. He could be good at this level. Like you just approach him and be like, "Yo, I know that the salary's garbage, but like this you would enjoy this more and I'll pay you more money. I want you to be here because it's representative of his league." I mean, college football, I mean, for all we joke about the XFL, in Georgia right now, I mean, football is huge. I
you
guarantee you they're watching that shit, even if it's stupid.
You don't remember a few years back, they tried to start a spring league that was based upon, there was a team going to be in Gainesville, a team in Athens, a team in Knoxville, and the rosters were made up of alumni of those schools. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I think it went bankrupt before it even started. But the thought was, you wouldn't want to watch, Rex Grossman at
Relive that
33
shit, yeah.
if you're a 32-year-old Rex Grossman, if you're a Gator fan, or you wouldn't want to see, whatever, crappy quarterback that Georgia had that they liked from. So there is an appetite for football. There always
But
will be.
specifically those guys, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you want to see a 33-year-old Johnny Manziel right now in the XFL?
I 100% want to see. I was expecting that shit to happen.
Someone would want to see that. You can't just throw a spring league out there, a bunch of no names in empty stadiums. No one cares. But you give us a storyline, a reason to
Yo, but
have
also
anybody
like
interested. We'll watch.
but that like the Baker Mayfields of the world, like the Josh Gordons
Mhm.
who's in the XFL right now, the guys who don't fit into the good guy image the NFL wants, they belong there.
Sure.
They want that. Like let them just be animals. It doesn't fucking matter. We're not trying to be good people in the USFL. These are guys that are talented. Whatever. Who cares?
That's
You know what I
fine.
mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
sure.
honestly where they kind of I don't know. I don't want to say belong. I guess if you're super talented, I should shut my fucking mouth, right?
Right.
In any case, I'm talking about this. Could you see Max Duggan or Hendon Hooker legitimately as like a backup that you would like on the team?
Sure. I mean, if it's something that we want to develop and have him be the backup, over the next few years and learn the offense, be ready at a moment's notice to come in and play, and if not be at a level of Daniel Jones, at least we don't fall into the total shit category. Absolutely, a younger version, a guy who has no. One of the things we said about Tyrod Taylor was we always felt in the back of his mind he was still auditioning to start somewhere. A guy like this,
I mean, it could become trade value in the future as well. I mean, I'm not just saying this for nothing. This is why you do this. I kind of didn't explain that, but like, yeah, you get this guy. DJ is your guy. You've already signed him, so he's going to be your backup. You play him in preseason finales and shit like that, and then You do that shit where when it's like week 17, you give him that Davis Webb treatment and you put him out on the market and see what you get back.
And they never were starters. I mean, a guy like Tyrod Taylor, what it's kind of like being a head coach. A head coach gets fired, becomes a defensive coordinator. They always want to be a head coach again. Well, someone like Tyrod Taylor, in the back of his mind, he thinks he could still start somewhere, and he's using every appearance that he's on the field as an audition to be a starter again. You get a guy like Hendon Hooker, who's probably never going to be an NFL starter, and this is your role, buddy. Back up.
I mean, I could see Hendon Hooker.
Example.
Yeah, he's like the one Hendon Hooker and Max Duggan I could see earning their way into like a weird thing, but I don't foresee it. I don't think that's going to happen. That being said, with the initial question of how far would they have to fall, like I said, round 5, you're staving about $1.3 million, and it gets all the way up to 1.35. I don't think any of the guys that I like are going to be there, but even if they do, this would not. Honestly, I asked this question before the DJ deal happened. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect only a $19 million cap hit against the cap this year. I expected a lot more. So saving this $1.3 million could have been more of a priority. I don't think it's worth it now. I think you stay with Tyrod Taylor this year, even if you have Max Duggan sitting there in the 7th round and it's going to save you $1.352 million. Who cares? I mean, I guess in the 7th round it doesn't matter. But that's just not going to happen.
If we're 7-3 and Daniel Jones has to not play for 2 weeks, I want Tyrod Taylor to play over a rookie. Bottom line.
Yeah. That's gonna do it. We didn't talk a lot about Saquon Barkley receiving the tag. I want to save that for. It's pretty clear they're going to use that tag to try and work on a long-term deal. So I want to save that for until that happens or until it doesn't happen.
And I also want to talk about next time, too. I want to talk about Daniel Jones. Like, now that he's in the fold, we need to talk about, how he improved this past year and what he needs to improve on going forward. Because half the story was keeping him versus not keeping him. Now the story has to be, how does he become better than he is and become more of that franchise quarterback that we hope and think he can be, and we're investing in, to be quite honest.
Let's do it. So next week we will not be talking about running backs. We'll talk a little bit more about Daniel Jones, and we'll move to wide receivers. We'll talk about where the wide receivers are with this team, what this team has, and what the options are in the draft, and if there's anything on the open market they should be exploring. So that's going to be next week, and that's a big one. That is, I'm sure Giants fans are waiting for wide receiver stuff.
Oh, I am. That's for sure.
All right, everyone. So we will see you next week on the usual spots: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And of course on Twitter for all up-to-date contract stuff. Whatever. If Saquon Barkley gets a deal done in the next week, or if I'm sure we'll get more details on Daniel Jones' deal before the next episode. So whatever. For sure. On Twitter, @football_grump. It's on the screen, @the Cranky Fan. And we will see you all next Tuesday morning. Go Giants.
Giants.